Good morning and welcome to our webinar, Tackling Climate Challenge Changes in the Northeast. I'm Gillian Hambley from Interface. My colleagues Heather and Elena will be hosting this webinar with our guest speakers Mark Strathy, David Noble, Peter Jackson and Cade Wells. So this webinar has been brought to you by Interface on behalf of the Northeast Digital Ecosystem. Elena, can you change the slide, please? Thank you. So the ecosystem is comprised of just a few of us. We've got Scottish Enterprise, Business Gateway, Elevator, Opportunity Northeast, Census, Data Lab, OGTC, Barclays Eagle Lab, Skills Development Scotland, and last but not least, Scotland IS. So based here in Aberdeen, the ecosystem are striving to support organisations to link in with the right people and enable economic growth in the area. As a group, we host quarterly events and to bring the community together to share ideas and connections. So it's fantastic to be able to open up our events to a wider audience and share what's been going on up here in the Northeast. Elena, can we skip on to the next slide? Thank you. So before getting going, we'll just run through some quick housekeeping. Fingers crossed you'll come up with some questions to challenge our panelists, not too much though. So if you do have any questions, if you could pop them into the chat functionality at the bottom in the speech bubble icon, that would be fantastic. And if you can include your business name when asking your question, that would be great. And we'll get to them at the end with our Q&A session. The webinar will be recorded and it will then be hosted online afterwards. I will also send you out the slides as well that we'll be going through. So let me tell you the first thing, and this is why we've chosen this topic. So with less than a year to COP26, we've decided to use this webinar to explore what organisations have been doing here in the Northeast to address and tackle climate change challenges. Climate tech is a rapidly emerging industry in which data-driven products are developed to enable communities, companies, and governments to understand their risk of climate change and take action to adapt and become resilient. Our expert speakers today will share more information on what climate tech is and how their journeys into the sector have benefited from collaborating with academia and intermediary organisations. I'll then follow up with how easy it can be to connect with universities through Interface's free impartial service and let you know a little bit more about the Scottish Funding Council's funding, that magic word, funding, and how that can be tapped into to enable these academic business partnerships. So to kick off and to tell us a little bit more about climate tech, I'd like to hand over to Mark Strathy from Scotland IS. Scotland IS just this week launched Scotland's first climate tech report, highlighting global opportunities. So over to you, Mark.
Thanks for that, Gillian, and thank you to everyone for having me today. It's a pleasure to be back here in the virtual Northeast. I hope to get back up sometime soon in the near future. But yeah, as Gillian said, this week we launched our first climate tech report for Scotland. I'm going to be telling you a little bit about that. But first, I thought I would kind of start with, for those who kind of don't know who Scotland is are. So Scotland is the membership and cluster management organisation for the digital technologies industry in Scotland. We have over 1,500 companies across our membership base, including our cyber and data clusters. And our members kind of range right across the sort of digital kind of spectrum, if you like, kind of ranging from that software piece, data, IT services, cyber, climate tech, of course, academia, and much more. So what do we do? So I guess at the core and heart of what we do is focus on supporting the growth of the digital ecosystem across all of Scotland, and obviously that includes the Northeast as well. And possibly over the last year, what we've tried to do even more so is supporting the acceleration of ethical and inclusive digital communities. We've all kind of seen just how much of a digital divide there is in the UK as a whole as well, and that's something that we are keen to address in Scotland, and our other initiatives such as Connect in Scotland have kind of sought to do so. We like to see ourselves at the kind of forefront of identifying emerging tech trends in Scotland. of which climate tech being an absolutely key one. That being said, of course, there are others such as space tech, gov tech, reg tech, and so on. So climate tech, when thinking about climate tech, it's always a tricky one to really pinpoint because everyone's got different definitions and ideas of what it actually means. But for us, the way we've sort of looked to define it is we think that climate tech directly links technological solutions to the urgency of our ongoing climate crisis. Therefore, that creates a mission element behind some of these companies, which I'm going to touch on later on in the slides. And this is perhaps a key differentiator to clean tech, which we're probably all more familiar with. So the climate tech piece covers an array of different technologies, and they operate across a number of sectors that I'm sure you're all familiar with. That being said, for the purposes of our report, we focused on 4 kind of key sectors, being energy, built environment, land use, and transport. And our report focused on some of the opportunities that climate tech can offer Scotland's future economy and workforce. And it also tried to identify some of those areas of market demand and the potential investment pipeline for these climate technologies. So it's okay having the technologies, but actually who's going to invest in them in Scotland? What does that community look like as well? So I thought I'd kick off with one that I'm sure everyone in the Northeast is more than familiar with, and that's energy. So I suspect you all probably know energy is the dominant contributor to climate change, accounting for 60 to 70% of our global greenhouse gas emissions. That being said, in Scotland, we certainly feel that the collaboration between the energy transition and the climate tech piece is there's plenty of opportunities there, and we can already see some of the great progress that has been made. So the graph to the left there, in 2019 we've already seen that 89.5% of our gross electricity consumption derived from renewable sources, and the renewables piece has been arguably Scotland's largest success story in this piece. So it is certainly pleasing to see that. And I thought I would just highlight, what's kind of going on in the kind of energy piece as well. So I suspect, some of you will be familiar with some of these case studies that we've used here. And in particular, obviously Scotland's largest PLC is Aberdeen HQ, the Wood Group, and their latest software, Envision, is doing some fantastic and very innovative stuff when it comes to data sets to help provide accurate views of emissions from assets, organisations, but also cities as well, which is obviously very, very interesting, particularly when we think about how we commercialise these climate tech opportunities abroad to areas such as China, America, and so on as well. The second one that I suppose we've all probably been somewhat ignorant of in the past is the built environment, in the sense that where we live in our housing can have a massive impact on the environment. And in actual fact, this is probably one of the ones that's most easy to tackle, in the sense that if our emission, if our where we live could be designed better, more intensive building use could be improved, and we could cut our emissions by 40% through better design and whatnot as well. And currently, heat in buildings accounts for 20% of Scotland's greenhouse gas emissions as well. So we can see that it's a big challenge ahead of us. And if we are to meet some of the kind of ambitious decarbonisation targets by 2045, we certainly do need to address the built environment piece. And again, this is some of the what's going on in Scotland right now, and some of the companies that are really looking to tackle this sort of head on. I probably would like to draw attention to Glasgow-based Integrated Environmental Solutions, who have been utilising digital twinning to understand, building energy performance and the associated carbon footprint with that. And IES and their client, which is actually one of Scotland's most iconic buildings in Glasgow, have been utilising the digital twin model to assess updates to their design, and following implementation, they've now actually looked at not only the carbon emission piece, but actually the savings piece as well. So not only is this sort of good for your emissions and whatnot, there is actual economic benefits to this as well. The third area we looked at was around land use. Now, land use, that incorporates a kind of wide variety of things amongst the sort of agriculture piece, the forestry piece, and also food production as well. And one of the sort of stats that really sort of struck me was if food waste was a country, it would be the third highest emitter of greenhouse gases after the US and China, and a worse fit to our environment than plastic waste. And that really sort of, kind of drummed it home. And I think we all, it's quite well documented, some of the issues in the US and China, but to think that food waste would be third after that was quite scary. And clearly, in our land use journey, AI has got an absolutely critical role to play in that. And I'm not going to steal David's thunder, who I'm sure will, come up, who is much more an expert in AI than myself. However, AI, the potential when it comes to monitoring crop yields, and reducing the need for excess water and chemicals is absolutely huge. And I suppose, a key part of that and what that looks like is around sort of vertical farmings. And, vertical farmings, the beauty of them is they can actually settle anywhere. There's no real, it's sort of independent of climate conditions as well. And, in the wake of the kind of COVID-19 pandemic, one of the things I think we've all possibly got better at, certainly I have, is that kind of localism of supply chains, trying to shop more local, trying to, eat more local, whatever it may be. So actually vertical farming has that piece as well, which can actually add to it. And on that, probably the best example and one of Scotland's sort of leading, in fact, not just Scotland, the kind of Europe's leading vertical farming companies is Intelligent Growth Solutions, based in Dundee. And they really sort of take that a step further. And, the thing is as well with vertical farming as well is it's actually an opportunity to create more sustainably and economically viable jobs in the farming and agricultural sector as well. And obviously the challenge there is, well, how do we start to move more and more the agriculture and farming sector to that, and how do we support them on that journey as well? And then finally, on the kind of four key themes we looked at, transport was the final one. And, transport for a number of years now in Scotland, sort of similar to the energy, has sort of been leading the way. That being said, up until, and I should highlight, up until the kind of COVID pandemic, there was a greater demand for transport services as well. And combining that with increasing populations, that did mean that actually transportation was one of the only areas with an upward trend of CO2 emissions as well. And again, whilst, maybe public transport and the demand of that has somewhat went down, car usage as well, it'd be interesting to see in the next kind of couple of years what that does as well, the possibly fear of going on public transport and all that as well. And, part of that solution with the car piece is around electric vehicles as well. Now, although the UK is one of the largest EV manufacturers in Europe, we are still lagging behind other countries when it comes to actually fully moving towards EVs and integrated modes of transport as well. And part of that problem is actually smart charging. Ironically, where I live in Falkirk, there's, for some reason, I don't know why they've chosen, but there is the largest electric fleet charging grids in Scotland, I believe. And, actually what we do need to do is that vehicle to grid charging, whereby electricity flows both to and from EVs, and that can save the grid by up to 270 million by 2030 to avoid any of these network upgrades and lower peak energy demand. And I'm pleased to say that in the North East, there are a number of exciting low carbon initiatives taking place. I suspect you're all sort of aware of the Aberdeen hydrogen bus sort of movement, which is, the largest fleet of hydrogen buses in Europe. And also, on that kind of electric vehicle charging piece that I just mentioned there, Aberdeen-based Trojan Energy sort of recently secured 4 million worth of funding to support that on-street access as well. And, they estimate that hopefully this will make it easier for 10 million people in the UK who don't have off-street parking to own an EV, because that's another problem as well. Where do you actually sort of charge it? And then finally, just on the kind of, as I touched on at the start, the investment landscape as well. We do believe that in Scotland, we are well placed to support the growing climate tech ecosystem through some of our innovation hubs, such as Dundee's Mitchell and Scotland Innovation Park as well, which is very much focused on low carbon energy and sustainable mobility. But also, the Mitchell and Scotland Innovation Park has a key focus on carbon and green skills as well, which will be very important as part of this journey. How do we create jobs out of it? How do we get people upskilled and reskilled as well? And what I would highlight as well is in the UK alone, the tech startups this year have raised a massive 1.4 billion, and the clean tech and climate tech firms are the ones very much at the forefront of this. So we can sort of see the direction of travel where we're sort of going here. So, overall, we certainly believe that the startup community in Scotland is well placed to sort of really take the sort of bull by the horns here and, drive that innovation in the lead up to COP26. And finally, I'd just like to sort of encourage you all to get involved, as sort of Gillian and Alina had sort of highlighted at the start. We did publish our first climate tech report on Monday there. On our website, as well as the report, we see this as being a sort of a growing community, in the sense that, we will be updating that with the latest events, the latest case studies, and climate tech resources for those of you who perhaps have, stakeholders, clients, whatever it may be, who are looking to sort of break into this space. And finally, if there's any questions or whatnot, happy to take them at the end, and thank you for having me.
Thanks very much, Mark. That's fantastic. It's amazing to see all the different opportunities that are available. So yeah, and as Mark mentioned, we'll be able to take questions at the end, and we'll also be sharing a link to the report that Mark was chatting about as well following this presentation. So now that we've got the better understanding of the opportunities what climate tech is, I'd like to introduce you to Peter from Planetary AI, a young Aberdeen-based business exploring how they can support the climate change challenge. So over to you, Peter.
Thank you very much. Okay, let me just start sharing here. Okay, good morning, everyone. As Gillian was saying, we are Planetary AI. We're a young company that we started in 2020. We're based in Aberdeen, and our goal basically is to focus on mineral data analytics. But it's really seeking out the materials that we need for the renewable technologies that are being rolled out across the world. Our vision is to be a world leader in capturing and assessing Earth data. That's all geological and mineral-based data, to better understand the deposits that exist, not just in Scotland. Well, Scotland actually has quite a mineral resource underground, basically, especially gold on the west coast. So, as I said, we're basically looking at understanding the mineral deposits that exist, assist in the shift from fossil fuels to green energy by identifying new targets for these critical minerals, driving deep dive analytics to extract most information as we possibly can out of both existing and new data that's being acquired through satellites, to be able to track and trace materials and metals from source to consumer using blockchain. That's to sort of ensure that we have ethical supply chains throughout the entire process. And then finally, to become active participants in the space program, which some of you may know that Scotland is one of the leading countries, basically, in Europe on the space program. So in terms of clean energy transition, as I said, our goal is to focus on moving from fossil fuels to clean energy and identifying the minerals that are required. The renewable technologies that exist are dependent upon particular minerals, especially rare earth minerals, photovoltaics, especially with gallium, germanium, indium, wind turbines, particularly reliant on aluminium, copper, and neodymium for magnets. And the biggest one of all is battery technology. The uptime on the renewable industry technologies is reliant upon the weather, the sun, the wind. So when those are not actually active, you've got to be able to store that energy somewhere. And that's where battery technology is critical to going forward with this drive for net carbon zero. Lithium is the greatest dependent mineral. We don't have huge amounts in the UK, although there's an organization in Cornwall called Cornish Lithium, which is extracting lithium brines from deep underground. So as I said, this is pertinent to UK, Scotland, as well as the rest of the world. So as I said, we're very, very reliant on these minerals. Just a little bit, bit of background here. I come from the oil and gas environment. I'm a physicist, so I've been focusing basically most of my career on the hydrocarbon world, oil and gas in the North Sea. And hydrocarbons that exist in the North Sea, they exist in sedimentary environments. It's very predictable. And although it's difficult to extract oil and gas, the actual environment in which you're looking at is predictable. You're looking at convex structures underground that fluids will collect in. So the big difference on the mineral side is that it's extremely variable. The geology is very, very complex. You're looking at structures where magma has been pushed up through the Earth's crust. You've got thermal hydro vents that are basically dissolving metals deep in the magma, pushing them up to surface. And the deposition environment is very unpredictable. So our goal basically is to identify where these minerals exist. And just to sort of look at this graphic here, you can see gold discoveries, for example, looking at expenditure over the last 20 years. Expenditure has been going up since 2010, but the finds are actually decreasing. And there's actually only a 5% success rate in brownfield exploration and a 0.5% success rate in greenfield exploration, compared to oil and gas, where we find sort of roughly about 35% success rate when we're looking for oil and gas. So there's much room for improvement in the mineral exploration process. So going back to trying to figure out how do we find these rare earth minerals, the minerals deposit and they form for a particular reason. The geology, we know how various minerals actually produce through, as I said, thermal hydro vents or through erosion and carrying through into alluvial plains. So the data that we're looking at, we can tie this into what we call taxonomies, ontologies, and semantics, so that we know these deposits form for a reason. So if we can tie existing data to the geological environment and then better understand the geological environment underground, we can apply algorithms, various algorithms that will look at how these things are sort of formed in clusters, and ideally coming up with potential targets. Our integrated platform that we're looking at developing right now will combine all these sort of functions. It's collecting the data, analyzing the data, applying what we call these ontologies, connecting environment to the actual data itself so that we better predict where these minerals actually exist underground in the various deposits. This platform will also include what we call blockchain in order to both secure data that exists on the servers. Mineral data is extremely valuable to the owners of that data. Obviously, mineral deposits can be very, very valuable. So we've got to be able to control access to that data through security, validate, verify, and also as the data is analyzed and goes through the system, you've got to be able to understand its disposition in the process, how it's being tagged, etc. And also blockchain is extremely important when we start looking at supply chain, ethical sourcing. It's a huge issue, particularly in third and second world countries where you've got to be able to look after the environment, you've got to be able to look after the workers and extract these minerals in an environmentally and responsible way. So again, we're looking at how we track the production of these minerals from source in the mines through to the actual companies that use these minerals in their productions. The strategy that we have, we've got various technologies. We're looking obviously at mineral sourcing, targeting, various exploration strategies, how these companies that look for this information are operating, applying machine learning, remote sensing through satellite technology, building digital twins for monitoring activity within the mines themselves, and again, going back to what we're talking about, blockchain for verifying the supply chain. Our markets, we're looking at mineral exploration, mining, geothermal, which is another important side issue on this one, because a lot of these minerals obviously are deep underground, so extraction can be possibly combined with geothermal extraction as well. And I won't go through all these, but looking at, again, more the environmental side of it. If there are extraction processes, how are they impacting the environment? Again, we've got to be conscious of how these important minerals are extracted, and also looking at space technology, not only on planet Earth, but potentially looking at the moon and beyond. Potential clients, we're looking at mining companies, exploration companies, consulting, and also working with governmental bodies. Our long-term vision is to participate in the Scottish European Space Agency program, providing mineral surveillance support to existing and new programs. You may not be aware that there's actually a spaceport, there's a planning application in at the moment. They're looking at starting work in 2023 on a site just north of Sutherland on the coast. So again, our frontier is deep subsurface on land, on Earth, and also in deep space. And also to be part of this discussion, as I said, in our transition to become interplanetary species. It sounds sort of very far-fetched, but when you listen to the news sometimes, you see what Elon Musk is doing and potentially looking at moving people to the planet Mars in 2050. So again, Scotland is very, very far ahead in the space program. So again, we don't have to sit on our laurels. We need to be actively participating and looking at opportunities. In terms of our monetization and strategy as a business, we're looking at providing consultancy services, engaging exploration companies and advanced stage companies, consulting for revenue, validating technology for the marketplace, and working on royalty-based activities, going into strategic partnerships with new young exploration companies, not the big players. The needs that we have going forward as a new company, obviously, is always, we're talking about investment for both the platform design, the computing hardware, and working with partners. We're actively collaborating right now with Aberdeen University, looking at algorithms, but we are very, very open to collaboration with further academics and involving other partners in our organization. So if anyone out there is listening and would be interested in getting involved, certainly get in touch with us. We're very, very open. The team that we have, we've got Gavin Birkenheger, who is an expert in the mineral mining, especially gold technology. David Noble, who'll be speaking in a minute, Ashley Bird, Roy Somerset, myself, Geoscience Director, and Henrika. So we're a very, very small organization. We work very, very closely together. And as I said, we've got great aspirations, but I think the future is there for us to grab. So that is us, as I said, Planetary AI. My name there is on the last page. You can contact me with any questions that you may have. And that is my presentation. So without further ado, we're on a very, very tight schedule here today. I shall pass you across to David Noble, who is both my partner in Planetary and also our other organization, Aventus.
So I'll just share screens now. And, right, so can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Sharing just now.
That's
Right.
right.
Okay. So yeah, so my name is David Noble. I'm the Engineering and Innovations Director at Aventus AI. And today we're going to talk about how digital twins can be engineered to achieve our carbon net zero targets. So first, a little bit about who we are and what our infrastructure is. So Aventus AI, we are at the core a group of individuals who are based in geoscience, structural modeling, and asset integrity, with a heavy emphasis on in using machine learning, and we've got our ecosystem has got we are supported by our ecosystem who are very talented companies who give us access to machine learning, to multi-physics modeling, and everything to do with with seismic evaluation as well. Our target markets are oil and gas, but also renewable energies. We're doing some great work just now with Iot University, and we're looking at the smart cities and smart manufacturing. So this lends itself very well to the carbon net zero incentive that we're working on. So with all of our partners and our internal group, we are focusing everything on our Aurora digital twin platform. So what are we passionate about? We are passionate about making AI, machine learning, predictive analytics and digital twins available to all operators, regardless of tier size, tier level even, because we're all in this together. So what is our ultimate mission? So we want to help asset operators demonstrate full duty of care towards the environment, and that is to help them achieve their carbon net zero targets, but also in maximising profitability to support the local and national economies. So for a digital twin to be able to have a positive impact on climate change, we have to embrace Industry 4.0 and the digital twin technologies. So for us, the digital twin has to align to key objectives and must also focus on identifying quick returns, which it can do because the technology is such that we're able to, through predictive analytics, achieve our targets very quickly. So a digital twin for us must be able to evolve over the asset lifecycle using AI, machine learning and deep learning techniques. We also have to produce asset health status and environmental telemetry data using key IoT sensors. So that data then must be used for our predictive modeling to come up with remaining useful life. So we use these answers to create the solutions to drive the next steps for climate mitigation and net zero strategies. So Aurora is our digital twin platform. So what it is, it's a scalable, multi-phase, integrated systems platform that's been designed from the ground up using engineering science and good logic that meets all the market needs for a workable digital twin. So the digital twin has to be an exact physical representation of the physical asset. So that means that we have to be able to get the IoT sensor information for the health status of the structure itself, the electrical systems, but also the climate, the environment that the asset is operating within. And all of this we feed into our predictive models, and we come up with the remaining useful life calculation, which then drives the maintenance cycles for the computerized maintenance management system. And so the thing as well about our twin is it has to be, we've made it very modular so that it can integrate into any existing infrastructure that a company may have. If they're just starting their digital transition, we can give them the whole A to Z piece. But if you're already a larger company that has existing parts of your digitization infrastructure, then we can fit into that quite well as well. So it's highly scalable. We can fit into any industry, any asset, any particular system within an asset, or even any piece of individual equipment. In fact, our twin design is so flexible that we can even apply it to a human being. So in the top right-hand corner, we've got a live example of what our digital twin looks like. So this is actually a textured 3D model. So we can see exactly what the physical asset condition is. But then, of course, we also use the IoT sensors to be able to look at things under the surface and also within the environment. So we're able to do things like real-time optimization of fault detection. We can do design and retrofit for zero carbon standards. We can apply this to achieve the community energy and renewable integration targets. And also, we've learned a lot from COVID that with a good, reliable, well-engineered digital twin, then you can still support your infrastructure, whether it be oil and gas, whether it be pharmaceuticals, or anything to do with smart cities or carbon net zero targets. Then we can be able to survive through the next pandemic, should that ever happen. And hopefully that doesn't have a big impact. So we're also looking at making the assets as autonomous as possible. So we've employed edge computing technology, and we're working with partners that are allowing us now to make even a single piece of equipment autonomous. So what it'll do is it'll have an AI package within the piece of equipment, which will then be linked to its IoT sensors. And then our algorithms that we will have developed for the failure mitigation for that piece of equipment will be embedded in that hardware, and the equipment will be able to transmit its actual processed in computers. Its actual results from its health status. So this goes a long way towards efficiently using bandwidths available, because if the assets are doing their own diagnostics, then they're becoming much more autonomous. So of course we can apply this to existing brownfield assets, of course, because we have to improve their performance, especially in the legacy oil and gas assets that need to be effectively cleaned up, I suppose, for want of a better term. But also, we want to build this into turnkey greenfield assets. We want to build this from the ground up within new asset projects, so that the asset comes out of the box already geared towards doing its bit for net carbon zero. So this lends itself quite well to smart cities, smart manufacturing plant. And as I said as well, because we're using multi-physics prediction and physics of failure IoT sensors, we can accurately measure the remaining useful life. So this helps maintain the high uptime and availability for both clean tech and legacy dirty tech carbon producing assets. So, but we also want to develop IoT prognostic sensor packages for these legacy hydrocarbon producing assets, so we can minimize their effect on the atmosphere. So as a company, we have our business model, which is based on collaboration and the achievements that we can get from that. So we've extended that further to the academic world, because we have a lot of ideas that we need to develop, and we found that the best way to do this was through organisations like the Scottish Founding Council and Interface. And so our first project is with Robert Gordon University, where we are combating the errors for human data extraction, because when we build master data for clients using a team of human beings who will, from the extraction process, will incur lots of quality issues. It means that we can, according to a study from the Institution of Configuration Management in Norway, they've said or found that if an asset's master data is 95% functional, then this has a direct impact on operational expenditure by a 50% higher cost than is optimally required. So, and then as that percentile drops, we see that figure rising dramatically. So there's a very direct correlation between information management for an asset and the cost of OPEX. So this first project has been run very successfully, and we are now moving towards the second phase of development for that. So we've also working now with Iot University. We've been working with them now for the last 2 semesters. We have 2 project teams of 6 undergraduates, and we're working on wave power generation. So we've got 2 separate projects looking at the same problem from different perspectives. And that's also going very well. We were very happy that that's been again funded by the Scottish Funding Council and administered by Interface. So we've got a very good working relationship now with Interface and Heriot Watt. So to take this collaboration piece even further, we are now in talks with developing further with Heriot Watt University. We're looking at, we're part of a 21 company coalition group that have applied for European funding from the EPRC, so EPSRC, and we are developing real-time digital twin analytics for smart connected factories. So that's a very exciting project for 3 years if we win that one. We're also looking at the SMARTS programme, again with Heriot Watt University. We're looking at working on innovative development projects with master students. And we have been asked by Interface to submit ideas for masters short-term projects for 8 to 12 weeks supporting the AI. So we've got a list of projects we're going to submit there. So we're very, very keen to keep our collaborative relationship wide open with academia, because we're finding it extremely valuable. So we as a company have achieved this, what we have so far organically with zero investment. And we've done this because at the core, we're a very innovative company with innovative individuals. We have got an extremely talented ecosystem where we are in continual contact with all of the company leaders in those organizations. And so we listen to the market. We have a wide network of oil and gas operators, and also now we've extended that towards renewable energy. So we're listening to what the issues are, and we're developing our innovations to respond to those. So we also want to collaborate with, we have been collaborating directly with academia as well, as I've just mentioned. So we're very keen to continue that and develop the business. And so what are we looking for? So we're looking for additional partners. Because our ecosystem is able to limitlessly expand, actually, we want to get as much IoT smart sensors as possible to feed into our digital twin. So we're looking at anybody who has technology that monitors climate, the ocean, anything to do with that, or even for physical asset monitoring as well. We're open to collaboration, and we're also looking for clients to run pilot studies, because that's very important. We need to get to run our projects on live assets. We're also looking for industrial partnerships, and we're working with one client just now towards that, and we're keen to do that with many others, because we know that through developing and sharing ideas from real world assets and problems, then we can really achieve things very powerfully together. And then finally, we've a lot to yet develop, and what we've achieved, everything is organically, but we now need to get venture capital investment, because we have the blueprint now from working with academia and working with our internal partners within our ecosystem for the conscious twin. And we're very keen to get that processed, because it's going to play a major part in carbon net zero targets for everybody, not just for us in Scotland or the UK, but for the rest of the world. And that's it. So it's my details at the bottom, and it's been nice to talk to you. And any questions, please feel free to contact me, or at the end of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you, Peter, as well. It's amazing to hear what Planetary AI are up to and where they plan to go out of this world, and also fantastic to see what Aventis are up to with all their strategic partners, and actually see the digital twinning and how that works too. So as a reminder, as Peter and David both mentioned, if you've got any questions, please pop them in the chat box, and we'll be able to get them to the end, at the end. So as many of you maybe noticed, the Planetary AI and Aventis AI both have benefited from tapping into universities for support. And those of you who are wondering how on earth do we find the right potential partners and maybe aren't aware of Interface, I would like to tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do. Elena, could you skip on a couple of slides? I think it's maybe slide, that's on. Thank you very much. So at Interface, we provide a free service to individuals, organisations and businesses of all sizes and all sectors across the country, matching them to Scottish universities, colleges and research institutes for a variety of different projects. Yes, universities are busy teaching and carrying out their own research, but they're very interested in applied research, looking at how an idea or challenge that somebody has, and researching the solution, and then making sure it's practical to implement into industry. Elena, can we go on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So our concept isn't new, we've been going for over 15 years, and in that time we've delivered over 2,500 first-time business academic collaborations. And as I mentioned, I'm based here in Aberdeen, covering Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, but this map shows the locations of all the businesses that we've supported, and it shows that our team is widespread throughout Scotland, so that we can really get to know and understand the areas and the businesses better. And we've recently had external report published showing all the impacts that interface has seen on employment and everything that's gone on within the businesses, which is fantastic. We'll be able to share that link in the email following the presentation. Elena, can we go on to the next slide, please? So how exactly do we work? Businesses can come directly to us, or frequently they're referred to us by our partners in the ecosystem, so Scottish Enterprise, Elevator, Barclays Eagle Labs, to name a couple. If they're in Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, you'd be introduced to myself, and I would chat with you to understand the goals and the objectives about the project. We'd work together to scope up a project, which I would then use to connect with the Scottish universities, research institutes and colleges to search the right and the best academic partner for you who can address your project needs. This search process usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks. And I suppose you could describe it almost as a tender process. We're reaching out to the universities to see what facilities they have, what experience they have, and what expertise they have. So after the 2 to 3 weeks, I will then let you know the different responses we've received and then facilitate introductions. And once the introductions are made, I don't just disappear. I do my best to keep in touch and keep up to date with what's going on in the project. And I can even highlight any funding opportunities that might be of interest to that project and to the company. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Perfect. So as the cost of collaborating with academia can range anywhere from short student projects right through to a more substantial investment such as a knowledge transfer partnership, we try to keep on the ball with different funding opportunities. One of the main funding streams that we tap into is the Scottish Funding Council's Innovation Voucher scheme that David mentioned earlier. This scheme is specifically designed to support a business working with academia, administered by my colleagues at Interface, but approved by Scottish Funding Council. These schemes are great for initial projects. It's a grant of £5,000 going to the academic partner and matched in kind or cash by the company. And as I say, fantastic way to start that relationship between the two parties working on something new and innovative. This slide that I've got on the screen just now shows the scheme and all the different types of options there is, starting with the standard innovation voucher, workforce innovation voucher, student placement innovation voucher, and the advanced innovation voucher. The advanced is a more substantial grant which requires a cash contribution from the company. However, currently it is just open to COVID relief projects. I've also at the bottom included the knowledge transfer partnership, as this is another great scheme to bring academia and industry together. So I would be more than happy to chat to people about these following the event. We are quite tight on our time frame just now, so yeah, happy to kind of go into these in detail with you. But the main thing to consider is your project innovative and pioneering? And if so, we can support you to find the right academic match, which will then support you to tap into that funding. And I suppose on an additional note, with everything that's going on in the environment, I would like to say that universities are open for business to support with any sector, including those tackling climate change. And we are here to help make those connections. And as Peter and David mentioned, collaborating with academia is a great way to bring knowledge and expertise into the project, enabling businesses to grow. Can we go on to the next slide? Thank you. So we also run an incredible event, which is great to find out about the different projects that are taking place. So you could come and join us at the Scottish Knowledge Exchange Awards taking place on the 21st of April. It's a great celebration of the collaborative projects. I would love to see you there. We'll include the link if you'd like to register to come along on the day. So can you close the slides, Elena? So before we, thank you, before we open up to the Q&A session, I'd like to hand over to Kate from Census, who has some information about what the Internet of Things has to do with renewables and climate change, and their exciting news about their Iot Secure program. So that could help your business. So over to yourself, Kate.
Thank you, Gillian. To share my screen. So you should all be able to see my slides now. So good morning to everybody. As Gillian said, my name's Cade Wells. I'm one of the business development managers at Census. I lead upon cybersecurity within the IoT space, and also smart buildings, smart infrastructure, and projects involving vision and imaging applications. For those of you who aren't aware of Census, we're one of 7 innovation centres in Scotland. We're a not-for-profit organisation that's part funded by Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and the Scottish Funding Council. And the role for Census within Scotland is helping private and public sector organisations overcome challenges, typically to create new products and services that might be IoT related or imaging or sensing related, or actually using IoT sensing and imaging to improve or create new processes within their own organizations. I thought, first of all, it's probably worth just kind of stepping back and explaining a little bit about IoT for those who haven't been involved in using IoT devices or developing IoT devices. And the reason for doing this is it just then sets the scene for the new service that we're launching. We've launched at Census, the Iot Secure program, which looks at cybersecurity, addressing cybersecurity within the area of IoT. So when we talk about IoT, what we're talking about is the Internet of Things. It's the connection of devices, typically by the internet, and these devices are interacting with the physical world, the world around us. I presented a slide here. I'm not going to delve too much into the detail other than saying that what you find within an IoT system is various technologies. It's not a single technology, it's a stack of technologies, one technology connected to another and built up. So typically there's some form of sensing where you're gathering data, that may be temperature data. There's some form of processing within this sensor. There's some form of communication of that data then to storage. This may be locally on site, or maybe a cloud system that's hosted somewhere else in the world. There's usually some form of processing of that data, analysis of that data, and then the visualization. And that visualization may be a dashboard, it may be an app, it may be a digital twin. And the key thing is it's about converting that raw data into information that gives those actionable insights. You're not just collecting information for information's sake, you're looking to do something with that information. And key to IoT is ensuring that cybersecurity, resilience, privacy, and trust is actually taken into account in both the development of IoT solutions, but also the use of IoT solutions. So when we talk to organizations about IoT and we talk about the benefits, we generally find that the benefits can be summarized as we have on the slide here today. For a lot of private sector companies, they're looking for increases in productivity, improvement of efficiency, leading to profitability. But increasingly, we're finding in the conversations that we have with organizations, there's an interest in how the safety maybe can be improved for the market sectors that they're focusing on. Looking at maybe monitoring the environmental factors in relation to their own business, their own organization, as well as looking at ways maybe they can innovate by using IoT to provide them insights, which they then can use as part of their product or service or improved process. And increasingly, we're finding within IoT, there's an interest in using it for compliance. And quite often this goes hand in hand with the interest within the environment. So for example, for organizations, they want to understand how much energy that they're using. Also understanding maybe things that they might release into the environment. Maybe they are utilizing water, maybe they're processing with that water and then some of this water is returned to the environment. And they want to make sure that maybe they're not polluting. And so that's where IoT can give these really good insights into how an organization is operating and lead to improvements in processes. And from a climate change standpoint, actually giving you that scientifically valid data to then actually bring about a change within an organization and potentially wider. One of the big challenges that is raised in terms of both development of IoT systems, but also use of IoT systems is around cybersecurity. After kind of concerns that people have in terms of the cost for developing and utilizing IoT. Cybersecurity usually comes as the second most highest point of concern. And if we think about this, as we are investing more of our time and finances into activities to have a positive environmental impact, to bring about a positive climate change, we really need to address cybersecurity, because without addressing cybersecurity and resilience, our investments might be wasted, or might not maybe be as effective because of issues that might be introduced. So at Sensis, we're very keen on people looking at cybersecurity right from the outset of either developing an IoT-based system or utilizing an IoT-based system. So the idea of security and resilience by design. And when people talk about cybersecurity, often examples are given in terms of the kind of threats and incidences. I don't really want to dwell on that today. I want to dwell more on the opportunity to bring improvements to products, services, and processes within Scotland. But I think it's worth just explaining the kind of 3 typical risks that people do see and which can be overcome by adopting best practice. By far, the largest risk that we see in IT, as well as IoT, is the accessing of data and extracting of data from companies, often by using an IoT device as an entry point into an organization's network. We have seen in the past interest in using IoT as a way of causing disruption within an organization or other organizations by essentially taking control of an IoT device and creating what's called botnets, which is a collection of IoT devices, to bring about a kind of a denial of service to other organizations. So this might be bringing down a cloud service provider, limiting the access to data an organization may host externally. But I think one of the things for me, which is really interesting and something that's emerging as a potential risk, is that, and again, this is very applicable to climate change, as we're introducing sensors into the wider environment to understand what's actually happening, we need to ensure that that data that's coming through is valid, and it's actually the data that's coming through from the sensors, and it's in fact not something which has been maybe injected or introduced to maybe lead to us making a different decision. So, this might be as simple as making you think that you're using less energy than you actually are, or maybe it's turning off alerts to the fact that you're just about to release hazardous material into the environment. And this is something which is really an emerging threat and a small part generally of the overall risks within the adoption of technology and sensing and actuating, but something that very much from a climate standpoint, we're likely to see more of, where people are trying to alter the perception of what's actually happening and using IoT to do that. So these risks can be mitigated by following best practice, both the design, manufacture, and procurement and use of IoT. But we're aware at Sensis that many organizations don't have security expertise in-house. And this is why Sensis this year, as part of the IoT Cyber Challenge Programme, which is supported by Scottish Enterprise and the Scottish Government, have launched the Iot Secure Service. And this is a 2-stage service for organizations in Scotland. It's open to Scottish companies creating IoT products and services, but also organizations that are using IoT to improve processes within their own organizations. And what we're offering in the first stage is a one-to-one consultation. So this is tailored support to organizations. Organizations can contact myself, and I'll give my email address at the end of this presentation. And we will talk to them about what their product and service plans are, or the processes that they're looking to implement. We'll talk about best practice. If in fact it's creating a product or service that has export capability, it's talking about, okay, what about legislation around IoT cybersecurity in other parts of the world and not just within local markets. Following that one-to-one consultation for startups and established SMEs within Scotland, we're also offering to eligible organisations the opportunity to have hands-on support from our engineering team at Sensis to embed in aspects into the hardware and the software to enhance the security and the resilience of either the IoT product and service that they're developing or the process in which they're using IoT. So this can be, for example, of improving encryption within a system. It might be helping an organization adopt a trusted platform. It might be helping an organization prepare for taking their products through certification, focus on the IoT security. Or it might be helping an organization develop a way of updating their product. So when new security issues arise, they can address those quickly. So that's the service. There's more information on our website. I'll provide a link to that source of information. Very easy to access this service. All we're asking organizations to do in the first instance is contact myself on the email address at the bottom of this slide to start a conversation. There's no application form that needs to be filled in for the one-to-one tailored support. And I'd be delighted to hear from any organization that's looking for assistance with their cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cade. That's fantastic to see that service is available. So we are very tight on time, and we had been hoping to have a Q&A session, but I think there has been a question that popped up, but I believe that Peter managed to answer that earlier, which is fantastic. So what we'll do is, if there is any questions, further questions, we will be sending out the contact details of the speakers so we can kind of follow up that way. So apologies, we don't have time for that today. But I'd like to say thank you very much to all the speakers, and thank you for everybody that's joined us today and attended. If you have got any questions, please get in touch with us, and everything that has been spoken about today will be shared along with some links for the reports and the various things that are going on.